How does one raise boys to become men? Whether you are a male who didn't have a dad in your home and now you're trying to raise your child to be more masculine, maybe you are a single mom who doesn't really know the in and outs of masculinity. So like, how do I raise this child to be a good male influence in society? Or maybe you're a well-grounded guy that just wants to know more about this. Well, I have the answers to these things for you here in a few moments. Now, first of all, why do I get to speak to this? Well, I want you to know that I have farmers, soldiers, and intellectuals in my bloodline from both sides of the fence. A ton of masculinity has just been poured down into my life, and I am thankful for that. On both sides of the fence, there are men that you can point out and say, those are positive men to our culture, and we could benefit by having more of these type of men. So if you want to kind of boil this down, what is masculinity, or what do you want your boys to aspire to? Well, there's three main categories. You would want them to be responsible, productive, and leading or initiating or engaging culture and ideas and things about them. So those are three powerful aspects of masculinity, and a lot of that, like I said, is just poured down through my bloodline. On top of that, I was not necessarily given my mind, body, or confidence. Those are things that I personally had to fight for. Maybe you're given a certain type of IQ, but you have to fight daily to feed information into your mind, and that's not just going to happen. As far as my body, I have been working out now for 30 years. And one of the reasons that I am able to run around with my teenagers and play airsoft with them without having some kind of stroke or heart attack is because I continue to keep my body in check. And on top of that, the confidence of life, how do you gain that? Well, through many experiences. I'll just leave it at that. So, but the proof, where is the actual proof that I have any clue on how to raise men? And I'll share this with you. I have 6 boys in my family, 3 of whom can be categorized as men. Their ages are 21, nearly 18, and 14. But if you saw them, you would know that they are actually men. And here's some of the qualifications for that. The older 3 of my boys are well behaved. These guys aren't the kind that you're worried about not coming home at night, or they're going to go off and get in trouble with the law, or going to go knock up some girl somewhere. They are very responsible human beings. And a lot of this obviously has to do with their Christian heritage, but it doesn't mandate that they are well behaved. At some point, we all know that children get up to a point of independence, and they have to choose to be well behaved. And I'm telling you, these 3 males are. They're absolutely. They are also very socially adept. A lot of times, Christians might keep their children in containers and then brag upon them. And then as soon as that container is broken, as soon as they're off to major college, or as soon as they get out into life, they kind of drop and shed all of their standards and they just kind of go their own path. My children are absolutely not like that. They are taking the things that they have gained within the family unit and within their training, and they're taking it with them out into culture to change culture, and not vice versa. On top of that, the 3 men that I am raising are incredibly helpful to those around them. They are some of the first to volunteer and the first to show up and the hardest to work to help someone in a time of need. I'll also say that these guys are confident. They step out into other social circles, and they, as they do, they're going to run into some maybe contrary personalities or some sketchy situations or some times of danger and whatnot. And they are very confident. And I love hearing the war stories when they come home and say, hey, this is how this went. And it was nice to be able to interact with this in this positive fashion. On top of this, these guys are aspiring. The oldest has his own business. The next 2 are running their own business with the possibility of starting a 3rd business. They're getting out, getting after it. They have never known, well, except for a very tiny stint, they've not even known what it's like to participate in a normal job because they're off establishing and building culture, not just waiting on it to come to them or to lead them about to wherever they need to go. So how do we raise men? How do we get our children to turn out to be productive for society? Well, number one, the grounding and the absolute foundation is a relationship with Jesus Christ. But don't just take your kids and help them be religious. Get them into the scriptures. Make Bible reading a daily habit for them, one that they will carry with them for their entire life, and let God ultimately shape who they are. That's your foundation. If God is shaping them and God is leading them because they are feeding their mind with the bread of life, you're going to be very pleased with the results, even if you don't follow any other advice listed for you here. Now, as soon as you make the Bible the foundation for things, one of the things you will begin to grasp is that your boys were created to be males. Now, that might sound too, just easy. That just sounds too natural. It doesn't really sound like it's saying a lot. But no, they were actually created to be men. They were created to be masculine. And part of that is something we need to embrace. Like, hey, this is their purpose, is to be masculine. It is their purpose to be the more aggressive and the more assertive of the species, the more outgoing, the more active between male and female. This is their role. And to further that, mankind was created out of the dirt. That's much different than the female. The female is much more elegant. She is refined from the man, from the rib. But man was created out of the dirt. And so we should expect that someone that is double refined and somebody that's just single refined would act differently, and we should naturally see the difference between the two. And not only did God create man out of the dirt, but he immediately put him back into the dirt and said, hey, I want you to tend the garden for me. Now, if you don't grasp much else, you need to understand this. Men need to work with their hands. I'm not saying that every job out there has to be with their hands, because not even my job as a pastor actually involves that a lot of times of working with my hands. But as a man, I absolutely need to at times work with my hands, and work with my hands a lot to actually comprehend and stay in touch with reality. There's just something fundamental about that you grasp how things work better when you are working with reality instead of this pseudo triple refined, quadruple refined reality that somebody else is handing to you. There is just a different comprehension there. And so your boys need to have physical chores. They need to have physical jobs. So if you have a home, make your children cut the grass. Make them weed eat. Make them dig holes for the flower bed. Make them carry the edging stones. Make them get out there and help change the oil in the car. Get them using their hands. Now, obviously in our culture, we have a lot of people that live in apartments these days. Well, how much more so then does that person need to really pay attention and to get my boys into the comprehension level of what masculinity is, at least in part? They need to have some hands-on chores such as carrying out the garbage, bringing in the groceries. They need to help move furniture around. They need to help carry the luggage when it is time to carry the luggage. You'd actually need to be looking extra for opportunities for your male children to be engaged with their physical bodies, because they were actually given their physical bodies to impact the reality around them. That is one of their main reasons for existing. Along with this, if one lives in an apartment, it is very important then to get out of the apartment and get those male children to a playground. Now, this could be said for girls as well, moving the girls to a playground so they can maybe more socialize. Of course, maybe they get that through school. But through getting your child to the playground, they have to get away from the television. They have to get away from the game systems. And you want to make your children really masculine? Totally turn that off. Cut that out. Some of my young children, except for movie night and maybe 30 minutes of game time on the weekends, they don't even understand the world of technology because I've got them out there and engaged with their hands. Now, they can't totally get away from computers and whatnot and phones and technology. It's just going to be a part of their life. But I am going to force them into participating with reality. And so when you push the child out there to the playground and get them engaged with moving their body and pulling on things and jumping from here to there and balancing, they begin to realize and become connected with who they were created to be, at least in part. And along with this is the general aspect of a male child discovering his limits and capacities. You see, male children quickly learn that, like, hey, I can see that male doing that. I think I could do that as well. And then they learn that maybe I can only do 8 push-ups and he can do 25. What does it take to get to that point? I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know you had to train for this or expand yourself. I didn't know I could push past the boundaries that are upon me. So you take, for instance, a person that is only pushing boundaries by going to different websites versus someone who is learning different capacities in their physical sphere. You can understand how one is going to relate a little better to the reality around them than the other one will. So there's the discovering of new limits. And this can be even seen in the world of sports. Maybe you push your child into the arena of sports because you want them to understand or to tackle new things to see if they are skilled in that area or not, but to also to have to be exposed to pain and the aspect of pushing through pain. That is a huge component of masculinity, is to be actually exposed to pain, because after the fall, God cursed the earth. He said, you will work by the sweat of your brow. Things will come to you by sheer hard labor. The ground, the earth is cursed. Our human bodies are cursed and frail, and they're going to fail. And a true masculine child will be acquainted with pain and the pushing through of pain to accomplish. Now, this being stated, as you raise children, at some point, they are going to get hurt. And I highly challenge you to not address the needs of your male children in the same way that you would address the needs of your female children. By all means, if your daughter falls on the pavement and scrapes her leg, rush over there, love her. She's going to need your attention for 15 minutes while she's recovering. But if it is a male child and you begin to coddle them the same way you would a female child, you are going to raise a soft creature that really can't deal with much of anything. He can't even be who he is. One of the rules of thumb, one of the things that I had to show to my wife, and now she knows it and can see it, was one of our children was running. They were flying down the sidewalk, and they stopped and smashed themselves. And it was a boy, smashed himself on the pavement. And my wife immediately wanted to run over, and I grabbed her by the arms. I said, wait. Let's see how bad it really was, because at times it takes some time for them to respond. Because there are times you can fall down and it doesn't hurt that bad. There are sometimes it's a level 2 instead of a level 10. But for the child that gets coddled, it's always a level 10 pain. And so they're always in the mode of avoiding pain at all cost. But men actually have to know how to transgress and push through pain. I said transgress, probably traverse pain would be better, much better statement of that. So I am not telling you to tell your boy child not to cry. That's not correct, because the scriptures obviously endorse crying. There are times men need to cry and get out frustration and pain and stress, etc. But you shouldn't allow them to just be soft when in fact they can control their emotions. Again, I don't think the same thing is true for a little girl. Now, at some point, she does have to control her emotions if she's sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. But for the boy to be sobbing and sobbing, you control yourself, you control your emotions. We will face a life of hardship and pain, and we will survive this and do well at it. Now, along a different line of reasoning, your male children absolutely need to be familiar with an authority structure, an authority construct in the home that is unbending and unyielding. They need absolute laws. They need absolute thresholds of, if I do this, I cross mommy and daddy, and there are punishments in place. They need the skeleton of authority impressed deeply into their character and psyche because they depend on it, as we all do. Let me see if I can explain. Do you realize that the entire scope of reality around us hangs on three nails, let's say? Number one is the nail of people. Number two is the nail of systems. And number three is the nail of authority. And those three things hold up society in general. Now, you can rotate out the people. There are people that used to do these jobs that no longer do these jobs. Great, you can rotate people. You can rotate systems. Hey, that old system doesn't work. We're going to try a new system. That's old technology. We're going to try new technology. But you cannot throw away authority, because the moment that you throw away authority, the systems and the people in the systems, none of that works together anymore. And if men are supposed to be part of the building blocks of society, the initiating and leading portion of society, and if they don't know anything about authority, obeying it, and then broadcasting it or enforcing it, if they're not familiar with authority and they're just kind of willy-nilly and all over the place, they're not going to know anything about masculinity, manhood, productivity, responsibility, etc. They won't grasp any of it. So they need to be very familiar with an authoritative structure. Now, on top of all this, as you give your male children hard assignments, and I'll give you an example. Last night, I had my 6-year-old and my 8-year-old in the backyard digging a ditch. Now, a ditch, you're probably thinking 2 or 3 foot deep. It's not really that. It's probably like a foot deep, 8 foot long. But for them, that's quite a task. And so I've got them out there digging this ditch, and it is to ingrain in them the hardness and responsibility and laboring and endurance, etc. But as you give them hard work, one of the things you want to do is come along and appreciate the hard work. You want to give them emotional rewards. You want to give them valuation for a job well done. You want to instill it in their soul that if they are productive, there are intrinsic rewards tied to this. And that is part of the job of the parent, is to build this into them. Like, you guys have done an excellent job digging this trench here. Amazing work. Now, on top of this, let's say they don't do good work. You do not let them off the hook. This is a fantastic training point. You're like, no, we have to do that again. Subpar work is not permissible. Subpar doesn't ever get the intended job done. Subpar doesn't help us function as positive creatures. It helps culture not at all. So we're not going to produce that. All we're going to produce is things that actually matter. And it is your job to instill that in them by appreciating the work that is done. Now, along the way, whether it is dealing with an authoritative structure or hard jobs or pain on the soccer field, etc., boys, young men, are not as good with understanding their emotions as obviously the females would be. And so as one on the outside of them being their dad or their mom, one of the things we need to do is help hold the mirror to them and help them to identify things like fear and negativity. Because see, they will not understand that they're just being negative to be negative and they have gotten in a foul mood and now they're making things worse on themselves. That actually has to be brought out like, hey, you're not dealing with this properly. As you're becoming more negative, you're becoming more sloppy and things are getting worse. This is a character deficiency, a character flaw, and we want to change that. I'm here to help you change that. And if dealing with fear, let's say they're going into a new area and it's actually fear that they're running from, there are so many times people just cannot identify that the motivation isn't that they don't like it, or the motivation isn't that it can't be accomplished. The real true motivation is I'm fearful and I'm terrified inside. As parents, one of the things that we can do for our boys is help them to identify fear and negativity and say, hey, it's just fear and negativity. Everybody is fearful and negative at some point, but men push through, and I'm here to help you do that. On top of thinking through these things, you also want to consider that we want to encourage our male children to try new things and to be willing to let them fail at these things. If they're going to undertake something, we don't want to take it away from them just because they might fail at it. We need to actually give them chances to succeed. We don't take the paintbrush away because they might get it wrong. We don't take the pressure washer away because they might spray and knock something over. We actually are there to help guide them through it and help them to do it poorly until they can do it well. So encourage them to try and to fail. It'll surprise you how many times they will bring to you a project and they're like, I think I should do this. And you're like, I'm deep down inside, I don't think you're capable. Well, maybe I should give you a chance. This is the same thing that helps companies grow. So why would it not help our children grow, develop, and flourish? Last thought for you is we also, because we're raising male children who are going to be a little more aggressive, they're going to be trying things, they're going to be attempting things, they might be high energy with their physicality and just be more aggressive overall. In that, they're also going to make mistakes and they're going to hurt people. And so, just like with the emotions, we need to be on the outside and saying, hey, let's call attention to this. This was your mistake, and you need to own that. Because if they can't own their mistakes, then they will never be able to correct their mistakes. And if they can't learn to identify when they have hurt someone, and if they cannot apologize, then they are never going to be able to hold relationships together and keep things socially functioning to be a productive part of society. So we want to help them to be able to own their mistakes and to be able to apologize to keep things in line. If you implement these things, any of these things or all of these things, you're going to have your kids on a path towards manhood. If you find this information helpful, here I'm going to say in about 5 weeks to 3 months, look for my book, Perfect Parenting. It'd be a great companion resource to this. I'm going to have it as an ebook on Amazon. I'm in my 5th edit of it. It's just taken a lot of time, but it will absolutely be worth your investment of time to read it. We have had wonderful success with raising our children, and we wish that everyone knew that blessing as well as we did.